Hello, Joss here, and welcome to this video where I share footage from my first proper PPL lesson. Now, I do apologise for this video being made so long after the previous one. I don't know why, but with real life coming along and keeping me very busy, making these videos kind of got pushed to the back of my mind, but I'm back now with a few more episodes of this series. So in this video, I'm going to talk you through some of the things that I did during my first formal flying lesson with my instructor Lee. Now, I'm afraid that I don't have any audio recordings from within the aircraft, and I don't have any recordings of speaking with air traffic control. For some reason, in the UK, the law is a bit funny when it comes to recording radio transmissions and then rebroadcasting them. So I've just decided for these videos to just avoid it altogether. It's quite simply, it's a risk I do not want to take. Anyway, moving on with this video. So this lesson that we're doing is covering exercise 4.1 of the UK PPL syllabus, which covers the effects of the primary flight controls. So basically, the question we're looking at is what happens when you're in flight and you move the elevators, the ailerons, or the rudder. Now what you can see on screen at the moment is Lee taxiing us out along the short runway at Inverness for us to do our power checks. Early on in the training, the instructor will be in control for the majority of the flights to begin with. Once you, as the student, begin to pick up some of the fundamental skills of flying, then the instructor begins to let you fly more and more of the flight until eventually you have hands-on control for the full duration of a lesson. So here we stop on the shorter runway, which is mainly used as a taxiway, and perform a power check after letting the aircraft warm up. This video was recorded in February 2019, and at that time of year in Scotland, things are most definitely still very chilly outside. So as we go through the power checks, Lee is talking through the process and what he's looking at and what he's looking for. At this point, I'm not really following along in depth or studying this process in detail. The focus of this lesson is learning about the primary controls in flight. So Lee is quite simply moving through these power checks with the pace and confidence of an instructor who has many hours of flying experience. A few minutes later, after the checks are complete, we're cleared onto the runway and we're cleared for takeoff. So I'm going to shut up and I'll let you enjoy the ride with me. Also, just to clarify, Lee is still in control of the plane throughout the departure. So, skipping ahead, here we are flying over the Black Isle just north of Inverness Airport, and this whole stretch of land is considered to be our training area for flight students. At this point, Lee is beginning to talk about the attitude of the aircraft and how it relates to the picture that we are seeing out of the aircraft. So you'll see him here pointing out to the horizon. Now it seems like such a simple thing, but correctly understanding what you see out of the window is what VFR flying is all about. So here we're talking about being in level flight, meaning that the horizon is level, it's horizontal, and it appears about halfway up of our view out of the windscreen. After getting bumped about by a bit of turbulence for a few seconds, he then begins to demonstrate the effects of the elevator. So by pushing the control column forward, the view changes. The horizon moves upwards and we can see more ground than sky. There's additional effects of pushing forward. Our altitude begins to decrease and our airspeed begins to increase. Then he pulls back and we see the forward view change again. The horizon moves down and we see more sky than ground. The altitude increases and our airspeed decreases. After a couple of demonstrations, he finally says the words that every budding aviator wants to hear: "You have control." And I respond with, "I have control." For this lesson, I simply mimicked and copied his actions. So here I push forward and once again, Lee points out what's happening. Then I pull up and again Lee explains what's going on. Then, after those couple of manoeuvres, I pass control of the plane back to Lee, who turns us towards the Black Isle. Next up, we look at moving the ailerons, or performing gentle turns to the left and right. Again, the main focus here is looking out of the window at the horizon, to see how the view outside changes as we move the ailerons to perform a turn. Here's Lee demonstrating a couple of turns to the left and right. At this point, Lee is also introducing me to the concept of having a scan. Now, a scan, in terms of VFR flying, is the technique that you use as a pilot to move your attention from one thing to another. So during a turn, you need to be looking into the turn, which means that you're looking towards the direction that the plane is turning. You're also taking a quick look at the horizon to check its angle, and you're also taking a quick look at the instruments to make sure that things such as your airspeed and altitude are okay. Now, with this being the first lesson, I'm not paying too much attention to the instruments. We're not concerned about flying accurately this early on in the training. The idea is to get into a good habit early by moving my focus correctly. So I'm looking into the turn, I'm checking the horizon, and then checking the instruments, and then repeating those actions. So, turn, attitude, instruments. The last control surface we looked at was the rudder. Now, the movement is much more subtle, so the best thing to do is to pick a point on the ground in front of the nose so you can see how it moves in relation to the plane. So here, Lee is applying some right rudder, and the nose of the plane moves slightly to the right. As before, he demonstrates this in both directions, now applying left rudder. So by this point, it was almost the end of the lesson, so we turned back towards the airport. As we were flying back, Lee got me to perform all of the manoeuvres that I had learned one after the other. Unfortunately, to save space on my camera, I didn't record any of this, so here we are just commencing our final approach to land back at Inverness on runway 23. Now, as we were approaching, air traffic control asked us to vacate the runway at the far end. This was because another aircraft was approaching the runway via the shorter runway. That effectively blocked our taxi route back to the flying school. So rather than land normally and then taxi down the entire length of the runway, Lee decided to fly at low level just to help us clear the runway a little bit quicker. So that rattling sound that you heard just after the touchdown was the nose wheel, which had developed a little bit of a shimmy, basically where it shakes from side to side when the wheel is spinning at high speed. It's kind of like a loose wheel on a shopping trolley. So we had the maintenance guys come over and take a look at that after the flights, and they replaced and tightened some bolts on the nose wheel just to make sure that everything was nice and secure. So that concludes my first flying lesson, and I really hope that this video was both interesting and insightful. The next episode will be out very soon, as I've got plenty of footage recorded from my training so far, and I'm really keen to get some more of these vlog videos made. So until the next time, thank you all very much for watching, take care out there, and I will catch you all later.